Hi, everyone. This is Coach DeMarco here with another Get Better Basketball Live, and I'm really excited about today's guest, who is a former Endicott College women's basketball player and also a player that I coached a few years back, and her name is Sam Charette. Sam, very, very excited to have you join us today.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Sam and I are going to talk about the transition from being a high school athlete to going on and play in college. And Sam just graduated a little over a year ago. So this is a topic that is still fresh in her mind. And she also works at a college in the athletic department currently. So, for Sam, I'm sure she's going to share a lot of great ideas for athletes out there. And I'm pretty excited. So we're going to jump right into this, Sam. And I want to ask you a pretty open-ended question, but what's the biggest difference from being a high school athlete to then going on and playing in college?
I think one of the biggest changes and adjustments that happened when I went on to play in college was really the speed of play and, the strength and aggressiveness of the opponent going up against. I think speed was not necessarily something that I thought was a weakness of mine, but I think, how quickly, plays change and, just kind of adjusting to the overall speed of defenses and offenses was really something that I had to work a lot on. But I think also sort of just trying to figure out how to counteract your, strengths and weaknesses within your own play. So I think, for me personally, as a center forward, I was, not necessarily as strong as a lot of the opponents that I was going up against. But, on the contrary, I was usually a lot faster than them. So, trying to really figure out the best way to sort of counteract your weaknesses with your strengths. But I think also, just the number of plays and, defenses and offenses that go into the program as a whole, you have so much more time to work on just practicing and, being with your team. So, I think being locked in during practice was also, it's important in high school, but even more so at the college level because there's so much more depth that goes into, I think the overall structure of the program. So, I think that was sort of the biggest balancing act for me as a player.
You were one of the more athletic players I coached, so kind of counteracting the strength of other players in college and using your own speed and quickness, that's a good way to adjust. How long would you say, you obviously played for Endicott for all 4 years. It's a very, very competitive program and a competitive league. So how long would you say it took you to really adjust to the strength and to build sort of your own, obviously you use your quickness, but to really get stronger to play against some of those more physical players too?
I think during preseason when, you're only playing against your team, you start to realize, the pace of play and, you need to be on your toes all the time. But I think when it really started to hit me was during the scrimmages and really, being up against different players and, they don't know your plays, so they don't know how to, defend you. And I think within probably the first half, I would say within the first semester was really when I started to understand where I could be a little bit more of an asset for the team, using my speed. So, I think it was also really important for me to take advantage of the coaching staff and, talking to them one-on-one and, addressing, yes, I'm struggling in these areas, but I'm also excelling in these other areas and figuring out the best way to, focus on those strengths and work on those weaknesses in practice as well. So, I think just, being aware of, your strengths and weaknesses and addressing that and, talking to the coaching staff was really what helped me then be successful, as the season went on.
And it really is a process in college. And I think so many players are used to kind of being the best player in their team in high school. And then they go on and college and there is an adjustment period. And I think, just kind of sticking to the process and working with your coaches, that's some great advice. I'm just thinking about, there's the athletic adjustment period, but what about academically? What was the biggest adjustment or biggest difference for you from being a high school athlete and thinking about the academics? And then as you transitioned into college and you're trying to manage playing for a competitive college basketball team and then also balancing your academics, what was the toughest part about that for you and how did you adjust?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when you start as a freshman, it's intimidating for, anyone, whether they're a student athlete and they sort of have the athletic community behind them, or if you're just, a regular student, it's a huge adjustment. So I think, the biggest thing for me was taking advantage of, academic counselors and, the tutoring center and the career center. Those weren't always something that I reached out to in high school because I didn't think I really, needed them. But, I think, the schedule of a student athlete, regardless of the division, is pretty intense. So making sure that you take advantage of, the resources that are available to you on campus are so, so crucial. And that was really what helped me as a freshman. One instance I was in financial accounting as a freshman, and that was not one of my strong suits whatsoever. But, the tutoring center helped me so much. It's comprised of, all students and, faculty members as well. But to be able to talk to someone that has gone through a similar situation and, understands that, you're gonna get through it and here's a process to help you get through it and, ways to continue to stay organized. That was really what helped me the most. And really, accessing them to help you, stay on an organized path throughout the rest of the season was really helpful.
Reaching out to those resources is so helpful. I remember, I played college football and the time management piece was a big thing for me because, you do have more time at different parts during the year, but obviously in season, you don't. So it's really like you get up, you go to class, you go to practice, you go to film study, you go do more homework, and then you go to bed. And it's really adjusting to that schedule and obviously making sure you make the most of what little time you have during the season. And then in the off season, still really holding that time management. What did the schedule look like for you for Endicott women's basketball? Obviously football might be a little bit different, but what was a typical schedule in during the season for you guys, just for athletes who are watching this that are like, hey, I want to play college basketball, and then the schedule can be pretty challenging.
Yeah, it can, but at the same time, it's very manageable. So when when we come onto campus, we have a small grace period where we sort of get acclimated with the campus and housing and everything. But then we get right into strength and conditioning in the preseason up until October 15th when we start. So that's usually anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week that we're doing organized strength and conditioning through the athletic department. And then, we do our own pickup and whatnot. So, the preseason is not quite as involved. But then once the season starts to pick up, until we start play, that's really our, most aggressive practice time. So, anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hour practices. And then, potentially film afterwards, but usually at the beginning of the season, it's mostly just, on the court play. And, I think once we start scrimmages and actual gameplay, that's when, practice times might decrease a little bit and then, have more film study and things like that. But typically it's anywhere from roughly 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours in the gym, pre, post, in, actually on the floor. And, class schedules are, varying as well, but, usually it's, class in the morning, early afternoon, and then, right to the gym, and then again, to sleep and do it all over again.
So as you transition, what was kind of the one thing, you start off as a college, as a student athlete, and there's obviously a lot of rewards to that and some challenges as we've discussed. What was the biggest thing you learned right away as you transitioned into college, kind of your biggest takeaway that you got from maybe those first few weeks of college or, first few weeks of college basketball?
I think one of the things that I was most grateful for coming in as a freshman was sort of the instant community that being a part of an athletic program gives you. Starting college is an intimidating, um, you know, it's intimidating for anyone. So I think having sort of that instant community was so helpful for me to sort of find my identity in this new place. And um, the resources that being a part of the whole athletic community gives you was really tremendous during my time there, but also post grad as well. I'm so grateful for my teammates and my coach. I'm so close to my so many teammates and my coach as well. So that was really something that I was so grateful for. Being a part of the athletic program, sort of outside of what goes on actually on the court. But yeah.
What was it like, as you transition in? And I appreciate you talking there too about the sense of community and how you develop that. But when you come into a new program in college, and there's an adjustment period, and there's obviously I'm thinking of at least one player or two players actually who you played against in high school, and you guys were competitive. And then you guys end up being teammates, and I think grew pretty close over time. But what's that like when you're the best player really on the team when I was coaching you, and probably in the league at that time, and you go on to college, and now you're playing against some of those other players who you were competitive with. So what was that process like, and how long did it take for you guys to sort of build the relationship that you built, as I think you're still probably friends with some of those players?
Yeah, I know it's really funny, and we think back on it all the time that you know oh, you were from Masco and now we're best friends and all these different things. But I think one of the biggest things that you realize coming in as a freshman is that you're now playing with the best of the best. So I think sort of honing in on your individual play and making sure that you are still accessing your best strengths was really important for me. Like I said, I think I struggled at the beginning of my freshman year just because I was at a little bit of a disadvantage strength-wise going up against, bigger posts and centers. But, I think accessing, the upperclassmen and what they've already gone through was really helpful as well. They've lived it. So, they have the best advice. And they also have gone through similar situations that I did too, and that was just how to best navigate the team dynamic, and how to go from competitors to teammates was really I thought it was going to be more difficult coming in, but as soon as you get there and you have so much in common that it almost instantly is put aside. There's those few awkward days, but I think it quickly went away once we got on the court and understood that we both wanted the same thing, and that was to do well and be a part of a great team. So
That's a great point, and kind of coming together as teammates. And something you keep bringing up that I think is also a great point is really accessing your resources. You talked about that academically, and then you talked about kind of reaching out to some of the more veteran players, and trying to support and help, get help from those players along the way. And what was that like for you? So, as you transition through your career and you go from being kind of this freshman who's looking for that guidance, what did your role become as you transition through, into sophomore, junior, and then senior year? How did that change over your 4 years as a player?
I knew how important it was as a freshman to be comfortable around your teammates and to be able to be someone that the underclassmen feel comfortable confiding in if they're having issues, whether it's on the court, they're having trouble with plays, or it's, something in their social life, whatever it is. I knew I was at such an advantage with how I knew the Endicott community worked. And so, it was so important for me to really help the underclassmen feel comfortable coming to me if they had, questions or concerns, whatever it was. And I think it helps them realize that, they should be in the same situation as they, continue throughout the program as well, because that's, how not only it's going to help us as individuals and as women, but, our program as a whole. Our program's not going to do well if, we're having all these, issues off the floor or on the floor, and, no one feels comfortable, confiding in each other. So that was really something that I tried to really focus on as I continued through the program.
Well, you're a great leader, Sam, and the coaches and the other players were obviously fortunate to have someone like you, guiding the underclassmen as you became a kind of veteran player on the team. But as players are transitioning from high school and then into college, how can they better prepare themselves to play at the next level? So for you, there was obviously that adjustment period, and I think all players are going to have that. But is there some advice that you have for players while they're still in high school now, they're juniors, they're seniors in high school? What can they do to come in even more prepared? And I know you were very prepared, but maybe even more prepared.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me as a player was to be a part of, a strength and conditioning group. We did a lot as our, in our high school basketball program, but also outside of just your high school team. So, one of the biggest things that I think set me apart from some other athletes was, the lifting and conditioning that I was doing outside of my sport. And, lifting was really important for me, not only for speed, but, just overall strength. But I think it also helps you become a little bit more comfortable once you get onto campus and you're actually, in a organized strength and conditioning program with your team. So I think that is really one of the biggest things that can, help athletes sort of, continue to progress, but also sort of set themselves, apart from other athletes as well. But I think, just focusing on the fundamentals as well is so important. The hours of micing that we used to do at practice, as much as I might have hated it at the time, I look back at it and it was so helpful. And, there's so many other drills that I could name off, but I think focusing on, the fundamental skills, just even more so will make players feel more comfortable and, really help them excel once they get into that practice setting.
The strength piece is so important, and something we try to emphasize at the high school level. But I think players, hopefully, that are listening and watching this are really considering that, because, in learning how to lift the right way when you're in high school, learning how to do squats and deadlifts and cleans and all different, bench press, any type of exercises that you're going to do is so important. And I'm just curious, when you got to college, did they, you knew how to do some of that. Were all the players able to do those types of lifts? And did they teach players, or what was that process like as you get in? And you did have a lifting background and did work out and train, but I'm guessing not every player did, and that must have been a disadvantage for them.
Yeah, no, it was definitely an adjustment for a lot of players, both, who had been on the team and, maybe the program had changed and shifted a little bit, but, a lot of the other first year athletes that I played with hadn't been a part of a structured program before. So, I know for myself, if I started, I think my sophomore year in high school, I started lifting. And, for me, the biggest part of lifting for me was really just getting the form down. I mean, I didn't squat with weight for weeks because I couldn't get the form down because, you know, my body was still growing, and it was just, so I think, you know, being able to understand just the fundamentals of the movements is so crucial. And then, you know, building upon weight and whatnot as you go on. But, you know, it really helps you not only feel more comfortable, but, you know, excel once you get it, you know, once you get to the higher level, for sure.
And, you know, kind of speaking again to the process and, you know, of learning the lifts and learning how to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So just thinking, kind of shifting back to the academic piece, I mentioned before, obviously time management. Did you guys have study halls and things built into the schedule as freshmen or all 4 years, or is that not something that philosophically you guys did as a program?
No, so our program didn't have any structured study halls. You know, some programs at Endicott did. But, you know, at the beginning of our season, we were sat down with, you know, a player contract, and that went over, you know, like all different facets of academics and the expectations for our behavior socially, and so on and so forth. But, you know, in that academic piece of our contract, you know, we had expectations that were set, and, you know, it was our duty to, you know, take accountability if we were, you know, having issues in the classroom, to, you know, reach out to the resources that were available to us. And if we were still struggling, you know, other, you know, study halls and things like that could be set up. But I think, you know, the biggest thing in our program was really to take sort of personal, just I don't know, just kind of taking advantage yourself, and really just managing your own time, and you know, the expectations that are set. And then, you know, if we were struggling, you know, there were resources and steps that could be taken afterwards.
Just thinking about, you know, that's a great perspective actually, first before I kind of jump into the next piece, because, you know, it shows the need for players to be able to reach out and access, and I know we mentioned this before, but the resources that are out there, and there are going to be some expectations. I know when I played in college, freshman year, there was study hall, or if you didn't achieve a certain grade point average. So fortunately for me, I was just had to do it freshman year, and then after that, I didn't have to go back anymore. But it's a little different everywhere that you go and everywhere you play. So there is accountability that, you know, for players to, you know, get the grades and do the work on their own as well. So as you look back on college and your kind of college career, what was your favorite part of being on the Endicott women's basketball team?
I mean, there are more games that I can count that, you know, were so amazing and, you know, just so great. But I think what's, you know, most important to me, and what has been, you know, such a blessing in my life, has really been the community that Endicott has provided for me. You know, I am still so close with my coach, and, you know, my teammates are some of my best friends. So I think, you know, the community that Endicott has given me has really been what I've been most grateful for. And not only athletically, you know, the academic resources that have, you know, that I have access to, and, you know, the professors that I'm still in contact with have been so helpful for me, you know, in my career search. And it's really just been, you know, an amazing community overall. So that's really what I think I took away most from my experience there.
How has your experience in college as a student athlete in college, you know, now you're in sort of that next phase of your life, and I know you're looking at potentially athletic jobs at the high school or college level. So how did playing in college, how did that really prepare you for this next phase of your life?
You know, I think there's so many lessons that can be learned in athletics that can't always be learned inside the confines of a classroom. And I think, being able to advocate for yourself and, take responsibility for your actions. And, I could list so many, but, I think the lessons that have been learned in athletics for me have really helped me outside of the classroom and, really helped, myself find my identity. So, athletics is such a huge part of my life, and it's really why, I want to continue to pursue a career in athletics. And I think, like I keep touching on, but I'm so grateful for the community that Endicott has given me, and it's really helped me understand, the sort of environment that I want to work in. So, yeah.
No, that's great. And that, that has come up a couple of times, that sense of community. And I really remember that as a college athlete too, and how they really embraced us as, as a football team and, really the whole on-campus environment. And that was a lot of fun and that sense of community. And a couple other things that I think you've brought up that are great points. The accountability piece, and that skill that you learn over time and how you've sort of taken that with you. And then self-advocacy. I know as a high school student, I maybe was not as great advocating for myself in situations. And I think, you learn that as a student athlete, and obviously as you go to college and as you get older too. But those are some great points. And then the other two things that, came up pretty consistently were, you talked about accessing resources, and not only academically, but the veteran players. And I think that's really great advice for young student athletes who are up and coming. And then respecting the process in the weight room of getting stronger as an athlete in the program. So you made some really great points that have resonated with me. And I think obviously anyone that's watching this, they're going to have some great takeaways. But before we leave, I want to have a little fun. And kind of think back now to high school as we kind of finish this up and transition out of the college phase and kind of think back. And, and I think this is important too, because, I think you have to really appreciate the opportunity to play in high school. Not everybody gets that opportunity. There's a lot of programs that have big numbers and kids get cut from their teams and they just never get a chance to play. So what was your favorite thing, thinking about the players watching this now and really trying to appreciate? A lot of them are saying, I can't wait to go to college. I can't wait to play in college. And that's great. But what was your favorite part about being a high school basketball player?
I think, just like college, there's so many individual games and things that brought so much joy. But I think, what I was most grateful for was sort of the pride that came with playing for your town and, representing your town, because it's something that's so much bigger than yourself. But, also, your teammates as well. I think sports helps you develop friendships in a way that not many other things can. And it helps you, you go through so many ups and downs. So to be able to, have people that understand that is really such a blessing. And I think it's a sort of friendship that, whenever you see each other, it's like, you haven't really been apart for a while. So I think really the pride of, playing for the town was really what I found to be most grateful for.
That's great feedback for kids who are still playing for their hometown. And I can say that nobody represented their town better than you did, Sam, when you were playing. I know everyone was very proud of you, as a high school player, and then obviously to see you go on and do great things and still do great things now. Obviously you played for me for your last 2 years. So I'm going to give you a shot at some payback here for all those sprints and me getting on you, all those times in practice. So what's something that kind of stands out, or maybe a funny story or something that you'd love to share about me? A lot of people watch these things and hopefully they're getting to know me a little bit, but what's something, a funny experience you had playing for me as a coach that you'd like to share, this is a good chance for you to get some payback here. So.
All right. Well, I mean, there are so many funny stories, but I think one thing that when you took over our program, something that was so important to you was team bonding outside of being on the court. So we did laser tag one instance, and I have never seen someone so competitive in laser tag, and I think it was bowling too. I think we did bowling, and it was like I'd never seen someone yell during laser tag or get competitive over losing. I mean, it was like next level. But there were some really, really great experiences during those 2 years. But I think something aside from just being funny, but I'm so grateful to have had you as a coach and as a leader and a role model. Playing in college was not always on my radar, and I think you really helped get me on a great path. So I'm so grateful to have had you in my life and throughout my basketball career. So can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Sam. I feel fortunate to have coached so many great players like yourself, and to still be able to talk with you and work together and do something like this where you share out a lot of great advice for young athletes. And I don't think there's anyone better that kind of transitioned from high school to college and now the next phase of your career, anyone better for me to talk to and get feedback for aspiring athletes. You're a great role model for up and coming athletes, and I appreciate you sharing the competitive story there, because of course, I think my brother Rich was probably right in that mix too, and we get a little competitive with each other sometimes. But we had a lot of fun, and it was a pleasure coaching you. And maybe we can get together and do this again sometime in the future. I think there's a lot of great points that you made, so I just want to thank you again. And I hope your family's doing well, and I hope you guys are safe as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.